welcome to the Geeky Clinicians podcast. Welcome. All
Yay!
right. On this episode of Geeky Clinicians podcast, we have the privilege and honor of having Dr. Candace Allen-Staten as our guest. But before we jump into talking with her, I'm going to let the fellow geeky clinicians introduce themselves. As always, I am Dr. Deborah Dantzler, Chief Geek here at Geeky Clinicians.
I am Jacinta. I am lead clinician and lead geek.
Hi, I'm Sandra Strozier, and I am one of the PMRPs here at Geeky Clinicians.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mona Taki. I am a geeky clinician and I am the geeky clinical yogi.
Yes. So this is a team, and we're just going to have a great conversation. First, let me introduce our esteemed guest. So, Dr. Candace Allen-Staten earned a Bachelor's of Science in Psychology in 1999 from Wright State University, a Master's of Arts in Clinical Psychology in 2002 from the University of Dayton, and a doctoral degree in Clinical Psychology in 2007 from Wright State University School of Professional Psychology in Dayton, Ohio. She successfully completed an APA internship, American Psychological Association internship at UC Davis, CAARE Center in Sacramento, California. She conducted and wrote disability evaluations as part of her postdoctoral work in California. She is a licensed psychologist in the state of Georgia. She has worked at 4 local practices in Georgia since 2009. She has provided psychological evaluations, sexual trauma evaluations, psychosexual evaluations, and therapy in Georgia. She currently provides therapy to clients at a local group practice. She is currently working on building a private practice and consulting business. Welcome, Dr. Allen-Staten.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Hey.
Hey.
So, as you know, Geeky Clinicians, we are a community of clinicians, for clinicians, by clinicians, for us, by us, right? Where we support each other in just getting geeked up about the work that we do. We do very difficult work, and it can be very emotion laden. And so burnout is always kind of right there trying to nip at our toes. So how do we combat that? How do we stave that off? By staying in a place of gratitude and a place of curiosity and passion about the work. And so, because those two things can't exist at the same time. So, this is why we have this community. This is what we want to spread throughout our field. And so we are so grateful for every guest that takes time out of their schedule to come and join us here in this space to talk about that, to talk about their clinical journey and, what excites them about this work. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Dr. Allen-Staten, Dr.
Yes.
Candace,
Mhm.
tell us about what was it that interested you in the field to become a clinical psychologist, right? Everybody has lots of different, I'm sure like in high school and college, people are doing like strengths finders and Myers-Briggs and all these things. And like, what are you going to do with the rest of your life, those early evaluations? So how did you hone in on this field and work towards being a clinical psychologist?
Well, I decided to be a psychologist when I was a senior in high school. I just always wanted to help people. So initially, I wanted to be a pediatrician, but I'm always thinking, so I thought that would be too stressful on my future family. So I chose not to be a pediatrician. but I still wanted to help people. And so I chose to be a psychologist. So that's pretty much what led me to become a psychologist. And I just followed it all the way through.
Okay. All right. So let me ask you this. So you said that really kind of early discernment in high school. Were
Mhm.
there any clinical, like public figures, any clinical role models, any clinical people, even characters, right? That you were exposed to that said, okay, this is um something that I feel like this field might be interesting. And I actually want to open that question up to everybody. Like, even thinking back, like way back, was there a particular uh, public figure?
No, there was no one. That's not the way that I had chosen to live life. I've never chosen, I want to be something because someone else is that. It was, this is who I want to be, or not even this is who I want to be. These are the people I want to help. Again, I've always been a compassionate person, wanting to help people. And so I wasn't looking to emulate anyone or be similar to anyone. I wanted to be a psychologist because again, I wanted to help people, and also as a Christian, I thought it was my Christian duty to help people. So this would be a great way to help people by becoming a psychologist. And I thought about, what are the people that are abandoned by the church? Maybe those are abused children. Also, I thought about helping families because I know sometimes people judge families that aren't the quote unquote typical family, i.e., um, a married heterosexual couple with two children and the wife is pregnant. So I wanted to help families. Also, I wanted to focus on diversity and things like that. So I knew that as a senior in high school, but there was not a person that I wanted to emulate. I wanted to become that person. So that is my answer to your question.
Okay, awesome. Anybody else want to
How
weigh
did
in?
you first learn about what a clinical psychologist does?
When did I first learn about that?
Yeah.
Um, I guess in college. Of course, I took the whatever classes we had to take in high school. I took those. I think we had like a very basic uh, psychology or developmental class, maybe my junior or senior year of high school. But of course, I knew the term psychologist, but I learned what it took to be a psychologist by going to college. And so
No,
that
that that's
degree, yeah.
that's not what I mean. What I mean is, so you have this idea in your head about who you want to help.
Mhm.
Did you know how you wanted to help? Did you know that sitting down with someone and discussing their traumas or doing these evaluations to kind of see where they are, did you know automatically that that is what it was going to take to fulfill you, or how were you pointed in that direction?
I don't know how to answer that other than how I answered already. I just knew that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to help people. Of course, as a senior in high school, I was a senior in high school, so I hadn't gone to college or graduate school or doctorate program yet. So I didn't know the methodology, but I knew I would learn that. We don't necessarily know the answer. None of us know the answers actually as they're unfolding. But no, I didn't know. Uh, I don't think I didn't know about psychological evaluations at that point because I hadn't known anyone who had a psychological evaluation. I knew that I wanted to be a doctor. I knew that I no longer wanted to be a pediatrician. So I'm going to be a psychologist. And again, I think I said this, but maybe not completely, but I was interested in families. So I did think about family therapy, and I was interested in children. So back then I wanted to be a child psychologist. I don't specialize in child psychology now, but back then that's what I wanted to be. So I probably still didn't answer your question completely. But that's the best way I know how to answer it because I didn't know how I would help them, but I knew I would help as a psychologist. And I knew back then that psychologists provided therapy.
Yeah,
Mm.
I can understand that.
And then
Because
also I wanted to do trainings too. Like I wanted to like educate people, because when I talk about families, I think the stereotype is what I already described: 2.5 people, and really white people actually, with a white picket fence and living in a good side of town and all that. But I wanted to educate people that any family can be healthy. It doesn't have to be that particular structure. So I think education was a piece as well. I'm sorry, Dr. Deborah, what were you saying?
no, 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 I was just kind of agreeing with what you're saying in terms of this journey of becoming a clinician. There's some fundamental things that maybe we're drawn to, but we don't have the future outlook of what it's going to look like. Because for me as a kid, the two things that I think that were drawing me before even having the language was I really liked Freud, right? Because I was like, oh, humans, we could study humans? That's weird. And then the other one was, believe it or not, from TV, was Columbo, right?
Oh.
Because it's like he was solving problems and he was figuring out like how things went together and systems. And who would have thought, like, okay, that's actually a part of therapy work, and especially us doing psychodynamic. I'm just naturally nosy. So this idea of these aspects from these early developmental spaces and how they actually showed up on this clinical journey. So yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I have a question. For those of us who are just now coming into the field, I'm just interested to know, what is the difference between, or is there a difference between a psychologist and a clinical psychologist? Is there a difference?
Okay, so I'm going to answer the question in different ways. In the state of Georgia, when we are licensed, we are considered psychologists, or licensed psychologists. Once you go through the licensing process, they call you psychologist. However, I am a clinical psychologist. It's just that's not the way they talk about it, or that's not the title they give you once you get licensed. But I am absolutely a licensed clinical psychologist. Now, some psychologists are not licensed because they are purely researchers. So if I was a professor at any institution, or I primarily did research, I would not have to be licensed at all, because I would not be seeing clients. I would be doing my research and I would be teaching. And so they are psychologists and they might not be clinical psychologists. However, there are absolutely professors who are also clinical psychologists, but they prefer to teach. And so therefore they don't have to get licensed, because they are not going to see clients. So a lot of us who might say we're psychologists or licensed psychologists, we're absolutely clinical psychologists. If we're seeing clients, we're clinical psychologists. But there are
Gotcha.
there are different types of psychologists, period, though.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Other questions for Dr. Candace?
Hi, what are some of the biggest challenges you've seen in being a psychologist?
That's a broad question. Can you make it more specific? I mean, I can answer that, but that's a very broad question.
Well, um, let's see.
So Dr. Candace, you mentioned that
Yeah.
you did a number of assessments and did different types of assessments. You did a psychosexual assessment, and you were doing other kinds of evaluations, right? Sexual trauma evaluations, psychological evaluations. And without kind of talking about the client part of it, just from you as the clinician part of it, what did you find? What were some challenges that you faced as you were kind of using these tools, or applying these assessments and these evaluations just in a space in general?
Are you asking about challenges because her question dealt with challenges, or
I'm
is
just
this?
kind of piggybacking off what Sandra was saying in terms of like, yes, it is broad because again, we face lots of challenges in all different aspects, but just
Yeah.
wondering about, because again, as LPCs and pre-licensed LPCs, the types of evaluations and assessments we do are very different than what a clinical psychologist would do. So that's why I'm saying, like, teach us kind of something a little bit about what, as a clinical psychologist, what do you find are some of the challenges in maybe that evaluation area?
Okay. I don't really think I encountered challenges doing evaluations, except that it takes time to do them. I'm very thorough, so it takes me even longer, maybe than the average report writer because of my thoroughness. Finding balance between doing evaluations and also seeing therapy clients might be the challenge, but the actual assessing the client, interviewing the client, scoring the assessments, writing it up, that part isn't challenging. It's more of a balance. And then not getting paid enough to do them because they take a lot of time. So that was the challenge, the actual evaluations itself. But I can say my preference is not psychosexual evaluation. So that might be a challenge too, just because that's not my preference. But yeah, and I likely will do evaluations again in the future. And if I do, those would be sexual trauma evaluations, maybe some general psychological evaluations, I'm not sure. But I've done all kind of evaluations, even ones that I didn't list in that. So I've done child welfare evaluations back when I was at UC Davis Care Center in Sacramento, California. And I did something similar, but not to that complexity or thoroughness here in Georgia at one of the practices that I've worked at. So again, the actual doing the evaluations, doing the assessments isn't the challenging part. It's just that it takes a long time and not getting paid for the amount of time that it really takes to do.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And Sandra, did you come up with a more specific question?
I did. What changes would you like to see in the field, in your field? Any changes you would like to recommend or see that would be an advancement or assist the different populations that you work with? Because I know you've seen some things that you've questioned or of concern, but how would you like to correct that?
Okay, so I will answer that question and I will integrate it with your initial question as well. So if I think about, and I've already kind of alluded to it by even answering Dr. Deborah's question. For me, it's money, money, money. And maybe that shouldn't be the case, but I'm just being authentic. My biggest challenge as a psychologist is not making the money that I deserve to make, not making the money that that represents the sacrifices I've made to my life and my lifestyle by being in school for over 11 years. I've been in school just as long as a medical doctor, but I do not have medical doctor income. Or what is in my bank account is not what a medical doctor has. And I'm speaking of a successful medical doctor because I don't know. But so just not getting paid my worth, and I know that's not just my story. I believe other psychologists may have a similar story, other therapists may have a similar story. And so I don't think that the country or the world pays us enough for what we do. One thing that Dr. Deborah alluded to earlier was that what we do is difficult work. It's hard work. And maybe she alluded to the fact that we bring our whole selves into the sessions or into our work. But then what I'm adding to that is, but we don't get paid for that. So that's my biggest challenge, is not getting paid my worth. And then another challenge is not being fully fulfilled. That's my other challenge. But then answering the second question, let me see if I can rewind my brain to remember the second question. What would I like to change in the field? Well, I would like I don't know if this is going to happen though, but I would like there to be less policing. Licensing boards have all these rules. I would like us to be able to do what we want to do. And I know that doesn't sound right, but I'm just answering. Because our world has changed since I've gotten my degree, since I've gotten licensed, and maybe since you all in your respectable fields have gotten your degrees or license. We are all entrepreneurs. A lot of people work virtually. I know you all are in person, and maybe you do a hybrid approach as well. And so I think that now psychologists should be able to see anybody anywhere. And I know they have side patches in case someone brings that up, but I think it should just be a thing. If you're licensed or if you've been licensed for a certain amount of time, then you should be able to practice across states without doing arbitrary paperwork.
Yes.
I also think that if someone moves that you've already seen and they move to another state, you should be grandfathered to see them if they still want to see you.
Yes.
I think that with the coming of coaches, what coaches have done, and you didn't ask this, is they have come in as though they are mental health practitioners, and people are paying them across states and maybe beyond state lines, and sometimes paying them even more than a lot of times paying them even more than they pay us who've gone and gotten education and who have done the work. And some of them do the work and some of them are therapists and psychologists. And they've learned that, oh, I'm not getting paid as much as in this field, so let me go in this field. And so I think that if they want to keep therapists and psychologists, they need to pay us our worth, and they need to be a little bit more flexible with rules. I'm not saying throw away all the rules, but make sure the rules still make sense for 2025. And I think that would decrease burnout. I think we would help more people. And also, I think that the world needs to be educated about therapy so that more stigma could be removed from mental health. Because again, that's why people will prefer to see a coach than a psychologist or a therapist, because there's no stigma to seeing a coach. And they're able somehow to pay coaches, but when it comes to see a therapist or a psychologist, they want to go through their health insurance. So I would like the world to know that we are just as helpful as a coach. So I'm okay with coaches. Coaches can still exist. We can coexist because we want to have the abundance mindset. So come on, coaches, exist. But I want the world to know that we are just as valuable, and we also deserve to be paid for what we do. And if they can afford to pay a coach, they should also be able to afford to pay a therapist or a psychologist. And I'm not talking about people who struggle financially. People who struggle financially should definitely go through their insurance. And there will always be therapists, psychologists who will go through insurance. And I think you all do that, or at least the company that you work for does that. And so that's fine. So I think I answered your question. Was there anything I didn't answer that you asked?
Oh no, you hit it on the head. I so agree with you because there is a fine line between a coach and a therapist, and I think we need to work hand in hand with each other. Sometimes coaches do tend to overstep, and when the trauma comes up in the coaching, that's when they need to refer them to a therapist. So we can work hand in hand again with each other and complement each other. And I so agree with you because a lot of times when people want, I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna get off my soapbox because I so agree with you on this. A lot of time when people go to coaches, they think that coaches are gonna be there to solve their all in all, and that's not true. You need that skilled, trained person to come in and help with any trauma that may arise. But thank you. I appreciate you answering that question.
Yeah.
You are welcome. And the problem is coaches don't educate people, even though they say they do. I mean, I don't want to say coaches are broad because there's some awesome coaches, but some coaches don't really educate people about their competence, what they can help out with, what they cannot. And also some coaches present themselves, come to me and I'll cure you. Come to me and I'll solve all of your problems. Or come to me and I'll solve this particular problem. And again, I think they need to educate people on their level of competence. And also, I heard what you stated. However, I think when they meet a person, and they might not call it an intake session as we do, they should really listen to the person's needs. And if they hear any mental health things going on, that's when they refer out, not see them and then refer them out later, or not see them and try to help them through that problem. Okay, I think you need to see a psychologist or therapist first, and then you can come back around to me, or perhaps you can see us simultaneously. But I will only work with you if you're also seeing a therapist. So I do agree we can work hand in hand, but only if there's no competition. But I still feel like there is some competition. And even I used to be territorial, but there's no point. There's a million people, well, a lot of people that need help. So who cares who's helping them, as long as we're competent in who we're helping?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that there definitely needs to be a mindset shift on both sides for both coaches and clinicians around the shift from competition to collaboration. Because I think if both were more open to seeing how we could partner together to support the person served versus trying to both, that scarcity mindset of only having like one set of hands on the person served, right? And there's more than one way to do that. But I think until we can kind of come together and have that foundational mindset shift, it's going to be, it's the sharks and the jets, right? It's like we're at war with this, other kind of discipline. And so, yeah, this is some great talking points. Great. Anybody else?
And I don't know that we have to be at war or that we're at war, but it's just us as psychologists and therapists understanding who we are and understanding our worth and marketing accordingly, educating the community accordingly. I think that will help as well. And yes, collaborating, as both you and Ms. Sandra has stated, if we could collaborate and educate each other on what we do and how we can work together, but and also educating the community, because I think the community gets confused. And again, it's because of the stigma that's on mental health. There's no stigma to see a coach. Exactly. There isn't. And they have coaches for every problem you can imagine. They have mental health coaches. Yeah. They have grief coaches. They probably have trauma coaches. They have all kinds of coaches. And that's fine if the person actually went to school to become a therapist or a psychologist and have mental health education. But we know that not all people did that. They may have a certificate. And so, yes, collaboration would be wonderful, but that's not what our country teaches.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, great. Anybody else? Any other questions? We've talked about some of the challenges. What have been some of the biggest wins over the course of your professional career? Just thinking back, just even one or two things that just brought you joy, that just were highlights.
Highlights. I don't know, because I'm still waiting for the wins. What I will say is, way back when, the first win that I ever had was getting accepted to the University of California, Davis Care Center, American Psychological Association internship. Because I don't know if you know, but psychologists go through the same process that medical doctors go through in order to get their internships. And so we go through a matching process, and we have to apply to internships across the country. And we have to fly there, and we have to interview there while still in our doctoral program, still writing our dissertations and still taking our classes. We got to catch up to what we lost. I mean, what classes we weren't able to be at because we were across the country. And this grueling process, and you don't know if you're going to get matched or not. And there's a day called match day, and all you find out is if you matched. We still don't know where, just know that you matched. And also there are some people who don't get matched, and so there's anxiety about, oh, am I going to get matched or am I not going to? And then we have a day, the Monday after match day, I think it was, the fourth year students come up and we talk about what happened. So then we got to say this in front of everybody, all the other doctoral level students. And so that Monday or whatever day it is, you get an email and you find out where you matched, if you got an email on that Friday that you did match. And so the win was, oh, I forgot to say this. When you go to interviews, you have to, after you've done all your interviews, you have to rank where you want to go. And so I ranked where I wanted to go. And you have to also decide if there's some interviews you did that you didn't really like the place. Because even if you rank someone low, if you rank them, you could still potentially have to go there. And so I didn't get that many in comparison to some of my colleagues. I believe I got 5 interviews. And I chose not to rank one of them because when I was there, I was like, no, I'm not going to do this. So I had to practice some boldness and not rank them. But the win was the place that I listed number 1 also listed me number 1. So that was definitely a win. And if I needed a confidence booster back then, that was definitely a confidence booster. So that would be my first win. In terms of being in the field, fast forward, this is not necessarily a win, but I did enjoy doing disability evaluations when I lived in Sacramento, California, because I enjoy meeting different people. And so I never knew who to expect when they came into my office. It would always be a different type of person. So I really enjoyed that because I get bored easily and I was never bored. Fast forward, since I've been in Georgia, I'm certain I've had wins. The clients I like working with most are those who are passionate, who are highly motivated, who are psychologically oriented, and therefore they understand what I'm saying. And clients who I see progress, who do homework, who also seek out adjunct services, whether that is yoga, whether that is reading a book, whether it's their religion or faith system. I consider those to be wins. And also, of course, when clients do graduate.
Awesome. Excellent. Excellent. Any other questions for Dr. Candace?
Yes, I'm happy you brought up the disability evaluations and how you enjoyed that. Because my degree is in clinical rehabilitation counseling, and we focus heavily on disability. And so I'm just interested to know, I know you stated you never got bored. It was, very much interesting to you. And so when it comes to the disability evaluations, what was it specifically that you enjoyed? Like, I know you said you never got bored. So are there some specifics of that process or that experience for you that was like enjoyable that you can explain?
I enjoyed it because I was independent and I'm a very independent person. I enjoyed it. And back then I wasn't licensed. So I had just gotten my degree, my doctoral degree. And so to be independent that soon was awesome. My supervisor understood that I was highly intelligent. I had it. I knew what I was doing. So I just did my thing. I just went there. When I first started working there, I was just doing it part-time, but eventually I ended up doing it full-time. But probably after the first or second evaluation that I submitted to him, he allowed me to have my freedom. So that was one thing I enjoyed. I enjoy freedom. I enjoy independence. But also, again, I enjoyed seeing the people, just interviewing them. That was the main part that I enjoyed, just being with them, learning about other people, because again, I didn't know who to expect. And I enjoyed seeing people that were completely different than me. And I saw anybody. I saw little babies. I saw elderly people. I saw people with different medical conditions. I saw people with different able-bodiedness. I saw people with mental health diagnoses. And so it was just awesome. And also another thing I enjoyed is I didn't have to do therapy with them. So I saw them and goodbye. So I enjoyed that. So I didn't have to do the hard work of therapy. I didn't have to focus on client resistance and things like that. They were open to the process because they wanted to get SSI. So I enjoyed that because I was working with motivated people. And again, it was temporary. I enjoyed it because I'm compassionate about people. So I did want to help them. So that was the part that I really enjoyed.
Nice. Thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. So Dr. Candace, one thing that we ask all of our guests here on Geeky Clinicians as we wrap up is, what are your best hopes for our clinical field, right? I know you mentioned earlier a little bit about definitely feeling like we definitely need to be compensated our worth, which is absolutely foundational. But what else? What else other thing might be your best hope for the future of this field?
I really don't know. Honestly, I don't know what my best hope is. I think I kind of already described it. I don't know. Helping people, removing the stigma of mental health, shared work, that we as clinicians are fulfilled in what we do, and that the clients are getting their needs met, and they're seeing that therapy does work for many people. I can't say therapy works for every single human being, but it works for many people. Being able to, as we've already stated, collaborate with other professionals. When we emphasize coaches, but other professionals. And so if therapy doesn't work for them, are there other professionals we can refer them to? So Mona's a yogi, I'm a yoga teacher, referring them to yoga teachers who aren't therapists, referring them to other people. And so you use the word collaboration. And when I was in school, I learned about multidisciplinary work, but I don't know how many of us therapists or psychologists really do multidisciplinary work. And so again, I don't know if I have, and the hope for the field is that we continue to grow, and that we grow with the changes of the time, changes of our country, and that when we see a need, we meet that need if that's in our level of competence and that's something we're passionate about. So in 2025, there's going to be new needs that didn't exist in 2024. So that we need to be flexible in what we do, and we need to be able to evolve and grow as people so that we can grow and evolve also as the professionals that we are.
Excellent. Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Candace Allen-Staten. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your wise words. We are so grateful. And for our viewers, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel and spread the word. And we will see you guys on the next episode.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.